Welcome everybody to this episode of the Game of Content. On this episode, I'm joined by Just Chatting streamer Mo Rains. Mo has been a good friend of mine over the past year and a half, and together he's going to give us his insight about Just Chatting and how his growth has expanded. So Mo and I have been in the same circle of entertainers just over a year now, and it's been really, really wonderful and exciting to see his growth. Mo began his journey on Twitch in July of 2019 and is currently averaging 43 viewers while maintaining a strong presence on Twitter and Instagram. Mo's content surrounds topics of community, gaming, mental wellness, and many other topics. While the directory of Just Chatting can seem like an arduous hill to climb for some, Mo has done a flawless job at maintaining his numbers during these streams, and his content progression is only headed upward. Mo's live streams emphasize kindness and compassion for others, specifically noting in his stream rules. Remember, there are human beings on the other end of those usernames. We're all in this together, so let's be supportive. That kind of genuine empathy and openness is a rarity in the content realm, and I'm honored to have him on the show today. As of June 22nd, 2021, Just Chatting has the highest number of viewers. Currently, as of the day I wrote this, it had 500,000 viewers. So there's a lot of broadcasters and there's a lot of opportunities to get lost in the genre of an oversaturated market. So today, Mo and I will be discussing and exploring how to grow as a Just Chatting streamer. Hello, Mo! Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much. I'm so excited.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. That makes my heart sing. As I said earlier, like you and I have been in the same circle for like a year and a half, and you know, you float around people and sometimes you'll spend more time with others as you're growing in maybe one genre, or you're doing something with your friends and colleagues, and I've just always been able to witness on the sidelines your growth, and I just want to say that's been so exciting to witness.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. That means a lot coming from you. And likewise, obviously, I definitely remember when we first kind of crossed paths. I honestly don't remember whose stream we were in, but your name immediately came up in conjunction with your podcast that you were doing at the time.
Oh, right. Yeah. My Ask Backup podcast.
Yes.
Oh,
and
you listened to that like crazy. I remember
did.
that.
I dove in and I listened to it and I thought, gosh, this is really, really cool. This would be neat to work with Mecha one day on stuff like that. So this is goals for me. So I'm very
Here we are.
Very
oh, dude, I'm so happy to hear that. You know, like I think you and I have a very similar vibe. We have similar energies, and I feel like we have a very similar outlook on life, and kind of like maybe we don't know the impact we want to leave on the world yet, but we're working our way to figuring it out. So Mo, I ask every single person on this show this question, and the reason I do is because it's such an open-ended answer. It is the Wild West of the internet. There's no rules. It is a luck game. It is a skill game. It is really, are you in the right place at the right time game. Mo, what is your definition of a content creator?
Gosh, like what a question, right?
That's the same answer. I get the same answer from everybody. They like, some people are like, okay, well, I thought about it, and then other people are just like, I actually don't know.
Yeah, it's just I think I think the definition's changing every day. I think it used to be that you could just be a Twitch streamer, for instance, and I don't really think that's an option anymore.
Why do you say that?
So I think when it was Justin TV and then it made the switch over to Twitch, it was a smaller pond, I think is really like the most concise way I can put it, because you've got that first generation of people who started, and you really could back in the day, I believe you just kind of pound the pavement with it, right? And just dig your heels in and just be there and just stream 40 hours a week, and your chance of success was a lot higher. Whereas now, I mean, I think the last number I heard was there was somewhere between like 5 and 6 million unique broadcasts a month on Twitch.
A month on Twitch.
And so when you just think about those numbers, and with the kind of inherent issues that Twitch has with discovery versus other platforms, I mean, it's a lot like playing the lottery. So and not to go on a tangent, but yeah, the reason I say I think the definition is changing a lot of being a content creator is because I think now it's a much more global presence than it was a few years ago. I think if you want to find success as a content creator, you have to exist in multiple places where people can find you, as opposed
and that's what you mean by global, right? Multi-platform presence. Understood.
Yes.
That's an amazing answer because it just shows what a difficult definition it is, because you know I've been studying SEO marketing on Coursera. Oh my god, by the way, life-changing. And
Yes.
what it's shown me not only how enormous, and Google has a market value of it's 70% of the internet markets in the entire world.
Yeah.
So that's insane. But it just shows, like, they'll talk about content creators in a marketing term, and people will hire professional content creators to do branding. But the only difference between you, me, and someone that's working for Nike is that they are a branded content creator, whereas we are more entertainers. We want to provide a service. We want, and maybe we're just trying to figure out our niche, but it clearly is such a varied definition.
And I think that at the end of the day, I think there's probably less space between what we're doing versus someone who's branded like as a Nike brand, for instance, because at the end of the day, I think they're providing a service just the same way that we're looking to provide a service. I think they just exist in completely different ecosystems.
Yeah. It's a lot more narrowed down. They have their niche, they have their audience, they know what they're like creating every single day. And I mean, that's also part of the fun of being a content creator, is you never know what each day is going to bring you.
Yeah, the fun and the stress. Yes.
Streamer Twitter, lols. Let's talk about your content creation journey. And the reason I do this is because I like to paint a picture to my audience who you are and why I chose to have you on the show today. But I feel like words, your own explanation will speak louder to my audience than me giving that big, long-winded description, which was important to give context. But I want to hear from you. So let's talk about, why are you a content creator? What brought you into this field, and why are you staying?
I distinctly remember, and I use this example because it was such a moment for me, just in life. I distinctly remember sitting in my office at work in November of 2018, and having
9 to 5.
Yes, it was. But it was in the music industry, so as far as 9 to 5s go, it was pretty on the outside. It wasn't very corporate in that regard. And I distinctly remember sitting there having the thought that I could try this, that I could try creating content. And it was a very strange moment for me because it was always something that was a pipe dream, right? I was late to the YouTube game, but it was still a big part of my life for a while, in terms of watching stuff on YouTube and always just loving the content that I was watching. And in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, it would be cool if, but it always stops there. And I distinctly remember having the moment of, no, I think I could actually try this. Like, I think I have something to contribute. And I didn't know what it was, but I felt that.
There was that hunger, that like drive that you wanted to connect with others, and not really a point of validation, but you had a message that in any decade of the world, we are so incredibly privileged to have these outlets to give our voice. So why wouldn't you, right?
Yes, and that's something that's stuck with me and kind of comes up in various ways as time has gone on. We were even talking about it recently. But so I had that thought. Fast forward 6 months, I did a ton of research. I watched a ton of videos on building a proper streaming rig and everything, because I had built computers in the past, but not one designed for content creation. So I did all the research I could.
It's a work of art, right? Like, you have to like, and it's like a fingerprint. Your gaming rig will not be the same as anyone else's gaming rig. I mean, I call it that, but it is a content rig, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a full workstation, and it's and it is unique, even if someone has the exact same parts as I do. This is mine because I built it, because I did the research and I picked these parts and I put them together and set my budget. I saved up each month and managed to fight through the self-doubt and pull the trigger and order the parts. And I got started streaming in July of the following year as a full-time Destiny 2 streamer at
Right. That's how we've all started, and that's how we all kind of connected to each other, is we were in D2 together.
Yeah, and I started in D2 and then jumped into Variety, found myself back in D2 for a bit, and have since now I do a lot of just chatting, which is not something I ever anticipated happening, and also play Final Fantasy 14 online.
You found so much success with that, dude. I was looking at your stats on Celinome, and I was like, holy shit, dude, your average view counts skyrocket when you're doing Final Fantasy.
Yeah, you can really I can go back and look at my analytics, and you can see almost to the day when I started streaming Final Fantasy. And it's credit where credit's due. The community is incredible. They are just very supportive and get very excited to see new players come in. B, they just love watching the game, and C, they in particular really love watching people experience the story for the first time.
Really? Oh my gosh. Well, I remember do you remember there was a movie called Final Fantasy that came out? I think it was 1998 or something, but it was like one of the first movies that had CGI in it. And like, if you don't remember it, I'll send you the link to it. But I think it was called Final Fantasy, but it was like, I don't know, it didn't really match the video game stories.
Spirits Within, I think, is what you're talking about.
I think so. You remember what I'm talking about.
Yes. And that was a really, I remember, because I watched that when I was a kid, and there was part of me that was bummed because it was not, it wasn't like it was a recreation of a Final Fantasy game or anything, but it was neat to watch that art form. It was neat to watch a movie that was entirely CGI and be like, oh, I know what this is. I'm used to this because I play these games. This is cool for me.
And to date, both of us, I think that came out around the same time that it was either Finding Nemo or Toy Story came out. It was like really early in the CGI movie game.
Yes, it was back. It was back in the day where you walked uphill both ways to go watch that movie. Yes. It was a real journey. You know, I started in Destiny 2 because I was playing it a lot, and actually, even before that, when I initially thought about creating content, I thought I was going to do YouTube. I thought I was going to produce videos and put them out. And the more I thought about it, the more that I was very overwhelmed at that process, because I didn't know anything about editing. I didn't know what kind of videos I was going to do. I didn't know how to upload to YouTube. I didn't understand anything about it.
So you had information overload, which I think is something that really affects a lot of content creators, where it's like and you compare yourself to others, you look at what's involved, and then you just get, I'm not even going to try anything. Like at that point, the mindset you're in is, the standard you're capable of, the standard you want your name associated with. And you almost drown yourself because you don't even want to put anything out.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was, I don't have a background in it. I didn't go to college, so I don't have a background in editing or anything like that. I've definitely been able to pull from my background for some of this stuff, but overall, it was information overload, and it was very intimidating. And then I thought to myself, maybe I could try Twitch streaming, because by that point, I watched Twitch. I probably still spent more time on YouTube, but I was at least familiar with Twitch. And so I had that thought, and I figured that's where maybe I could start and then tackle YouTube later on. So fast forward to starting, I started with Destiny 2 because I felt that I was knowledgeable in the game and that I could help others with the game. That was really my grounds for starting with that. And I did that for a couple months, and I had fun, but I felt myself getting burnt out, which was one of my concerns when I was initially starting. I typically am not just a one-game kind of person. I've played video games my whole life.
One-trick pony.
Yeah, but I've never just dug in exactly on there are people who play Destiny 2 since launch, and that's all they play, and God love them. I just can't do it.
I do it for self-care now, where I'm like, I just want to zone out. I'll just do bounties and just hang out, but I'm not an end game creator. I can't do that. And I admire the fuck out of the people that do that, because it's not that that's oversaturated. I mean, it is a little bit, but there's 5 major players in the end game YouTube game and the Twitch game, and I admire their workflow so much and commitment to the brand.
Yeah, 100%. And I didn't think I was going to get to that point where I was going to be streaming raids constantly, or creating that kind of content for YouTube, and I started to feel burnout, and it started to give me anxiety, and that was kind of the first time I had the moment of, if I'm going to put this much time and effort into it, I don't want this to be a burden. I don't want to be anxious about something that I should be excited about.
It shows on camera. It shows in your content.
Yeah, absolutely. Audiences are very, very smart. The audience as a body is a very intelligent organism and can always tell a fake, can always tell when you're trying to cover something up, can always tell when you're not being authentic. And it may take them longer for other creators and shorter for some, but they'll figure it out eventually. Yeah. And that was kind of weighing on me. So I had conversations. I have a very good sounding board in Mrs. Mo, thankfully. So I had conversations with her, and I ended up switching to variety. And I did a series of variety games for a while, which was great. And I had a lot of fun with that. I also had some definite highs and lows with that, which we can get into later. And found myself back on Destiny for a while, and felt myself with the release, with the last year's release, Beyond Light, actually, Light. Sorry.
Yeah, the one that just came out.
Yes, yeah, I felt myself getting burnt out again, and ended up, it really was just happenstance. I had been curious to jump back into Final Fantasy XIV. I had played it briefly a couple years prior, and I thought, this will be fun. I just kind of want to check it out again, and we'll stream it because why not? And here we are. No, I really only, I had played it for a couple weeks the year before I started streaming, I think. Or actually, it may even have been the year that I started streaming. I tried it for a couple weeks, and I had fun with it, and then I think I just got distracted, probably by Destiny or something else, and ended up setting the game down. Yeah, exactly. And so I set the game down, and then I just, I was like, well, sure, why not? I'll try it again. What's the harm? And, here we are, 9 months later, and I haven't stopped playing it.
Found something that aligns with your personality and being present and being there with your audience, and I think you found that sweet spot that is really hard to find for some creators.
Yeah, it was a blessing, and I think a big part of it for me was the community. I had started to, when I first started streaming, I did not think I was going to do chatting, because I didn't think people would find it entertaining. I didn't think people were going to come to my stream to chat with me. I thought they were going to come to.
I want to ask a question about that. I think that's really important because I deal with that voice in my head as well. But I'm curious, was it a technical restriction or was it an internal mental restriction where you were self-doubting yourself?
Yeah, it was totally internal and mental. I just didn't think people would find me interesting. I thought if they were going to...
Ever since I met you, I'm like, Mo's like one of the smartest people I know.
Thank you. That's really nice of you to say. And that's not something I tell myself. I didn't think people would find me interesting. I thought if they were going to come to my stream, they were going to come to my stream for the game that I was playing. And I really wanted to use that as a crutch because I have played games my whole life. I feel like I'm good at video games. And so if I was going to stream, I was like, well, I'm talented at this. I'll stream that. And, maybe people can come in and we can have conversations about the game. I thought that would be the extent of chatting. And I was wrong. It wasn't until I started doing variety, and it wasn't until the community started to grow and we just started to have more conversations with each other, and the thing with just chatting is I think everyone approaches it differently. I felt that there is great value in someone feeling like their voice is heard. So when someone comes in and they're just chatting and you say, how are you doing? And you actually want to hear the answer, and they say, I'm doing good, and you actually hear them, or it was a rough day, and you actually hear them, and you talk about it. I think that holds a lot of weight with a lot of people, and all of a sudden, kind of without intending it, without realizing it, this community was starting to form where it was entertaining to just sit and just talk with people and just be social. And this was also in the middle of the pandemic when everyone was turning to the internet because you could not go outside, and so you literally couldn't go outside and talk to people. And it was a unique and very unintended experience that has led to where we're at now, where honestly the majority of my stream time is probably just chatting.
70% of your streams and your stats was just chatting, and that was where you had the most consistent viewership, and it really stayed around 43, and that was so impressive to see, knowing who you are and knowing the caliber of personality you bring to your productions. That was just so cool and so like rewarding as someone in your circle to see. So that was just, I think you've done a killer job, and you're not looking at this as numbers. Like, not, I've been the one that's brought up numbers mostly in this conversation, but you have talked about providing a meaningful, impactful resource to people, and I think that is the commodity you're dealing with.
Yeah. It's it's a balance, because you have to look at the numbers, right? They're important, and I totally get when you have these conversations with people and they're like, oh, I never look at the numbers, and it's not about that, and it's like, yeah, I mean, you're right, it's about community and being authentic and true to yourself, but there is the business side of it, right? There is the knowledge. It's
finding that middle ground of understanding it.
Yeah, exactly. There's the knowledge that, yes, it does have to be financially sustainable in order to keep doing it long term. But yes, when it comes to, I'm going to turn on stream today, it comes down to wanting to have a purpose and wanting to provide a service.
I love that. That makes me so, my smile is enormous for you right now. So I'm so excited.
Mika. Thank you.
So we're going to go into one of our first topics. I think just chatting is so intimidating, and here I am, but this is pre-recorded. Like, I have full control over everything. I don't have anything unexpected happening. And that anxiety once was so drowning to me. If I were to do a just chatting stream, I would just need to be like, there's alerts, there's engagement in chat. What am I going to do about dead air? And I want to talk about your first just chatting stream and the progression you've had since, things you've learned. Let's talk about some lows, some highs you had. And I really want to hear about, when was the moment you knew that this was a strength of yours and you wanted to pursue and see where it took you?
So that's kind of two parts for me. The first time I remember having a longer just chatting stream, it was not exclusively just chatting. Definitely played, I think I was probably playing Hollow Knight at the time. Definitely played some Hollow Knight, at the beginning and end of stream. But there was just a lot of chatting throughout, and I distinctly remember I ended up having like an hour and a half long chunk of just chatting, and I have that memory of just realizing, oh my gosh, we've been talking this entire time, and it hasn't felt slow, it hasn't felt forced or anything. We just got into conversation, and I went to full screen, and we just talked.
So was it your audience that started the topic?
I'm not sure. I think we just organically got to a place. I don't even remember what we were talking about, if I'm totally honest. But it was, to their credit, it definitely lasted as long as it did because people were very engaging. And, when I said at the beginning, I have this tendency to really go on tangents, which I think opens up a lot of questions for people to ask sometimes. But I have this distinct memory of being really shocked that we spent that much time chatting, and being equally shocked that it seemed like everyone, including myself, was having a lot of fun doing it. And it was very unexpected. Fast forward to much more recently, I think was actually when I did my first official full just chatting stream where there was no gameplay at all. And it actually gave me a lot of anxiety because I had not intended to do just chatting. The structure that I had gotten into was we would chat for 1 or 2 hours each day at the beginning of stream, but eventually we would get to a game. Eventually we would have gameplay, and this stream it didn't happen because a couple things kept coming up. I had a couple things happen IRL, like one of my dogs got sick and threw up right outside the office, and so I had to step away for like 30 minutes and clean that.
Dogs come first. Dogs come first always.
Yeah, and so it turned into, and I was apologetic. I said, I'm so sorry. I know we meant to get to gameplay today, but it's just there's so much going on, so I'm gonna go ahead and end stream. And it was, I think it was 2.5 or 3 hours, and we just chatted. And I looked back on it, and it gave me anxiety at first because I felt like I had under-delivered.
Yeah, you felt like you didn't meet up to the standard that you know you're capable of.
Yes, and I felt like I had promised something and then said, psych, I can't actually do that. And that's
that gives me anxiety.
I know, and I really, really struggle with that. That's why I don't do big announcements on Twitter or Instagram or anything like that. You will rarely, if ever, see me be like, got something really big in the works, because it's just a source of anxiety, and I would rather just channel that into just doing it, and then when I announce it, be like, hey, here's this project. This happened. So I really always avoid promising and then not delivering if it is at all possible. But I looked back, and I was anxious about it initially, but the more I thought about it, the more it was a fun stream. Like, everyone had a great time, and we had a good time talking. And since then, we've had a few streams that were unintentionally just chatting the entire time. And then very, very recently, like within the past couple weeks, we've started to really set aside, like, okay, Tuesday is going to be a just chatting day, and we're going to talk about a specific subject. And so this last Tuesday was actually the first time that I did exclusively that, where I almost had a presentation to start an open conversation. And that was the whole intent of the stream, and I was very clear on it in communicating that with everyone, because that, for me, set the expectation for them and myself of, we're not going to play games today. We are just chatting, and we're going to talk about something very, very specific. And that was a wonderful experience. Picked the subject beforehand? Yes. Yeah. I had come up with the subject and the thought for it the week before, tweeted it out, just kind of asking the general question, and then had conversations with people on Twitter about it, did research online, listened to a bunch of stuff on it, and then jumped in, kind of prepared as many resources as I could going into Tuesday.
Oh, I understand. I think I saw on Twitter, and I think it was either that one or the one before then, where you had a really engaging, thoughtful conversation on that Twitch stream. And I saw on Twitter you were discussing it and how happy you were that you had that conversation. And I think that was probably, I mean, I sounded like it was an incredibly rewarding experience.
It was great, because it was a lot of fun to just connect with everyone and talk about that. And to be really clear, it's just discussing shared experiences. It's not like, you know, I'm not certified in anything. I didn't go to college. I'm not a medical professional. I'm not a therapist. This is not a, hey, I'm going to give you all advice on this. This is just, we talked about procrastination, and this is hey, this has been my experience with it, and these are the emotions that have accompanied that journey, and just setting that up as a conversation. And so it was great, A, for me to just talk about all of that stuff, but B, then have conversations, and you realize how many people go through it, and that's kind of
comforting.
It's comforting, and it's also, I don't know if this will come up later or how we'll talk on it, but that feels connected to that feels more connected to me in terms of what I want my purpose to be in terms of creating content, is having conversations and opening a platform for people to have conversations about stuff that we're all experiencing, and just maybe people feel shame in talking about, or maybe people feel isolated and they don't want to talk about it, and kind of just opening up to where it's like, hey, you know what? I've really struggled with this. Let me share my story with you. And then if you feel comfortable and you want to talk about it, like, oh my gosh, I felt that too. Cool. And if not, that's cool too. But the platform is there.
Before I started streaming and content creating, this is going into my third year, I think. So when Shadowkeep came out, that was my first year. That's where I mark when I started. And the person I was so isolated, lonely, sad. I had no community. Like I had just moved home 2 years prior from Toronto, where I'd built most of my professional life in the film industry there. And I came
Hmm.
home and I had nothing. And I didn't know what Twitch was. I didn't know what anything really was online. I had spent 10 years in the production game of making movies. And so I had no context, nothing. And I feel like I have traveled the world into different cultures and perspectives just by being on these platforms, because people
Hmm.
have shown me their worldview, they've shown me their perspective, they've shared their loneliness, their grief, their sadness, and allowed me into that world with them. And I feel like that has almost given me more growth that I would love to give back to somebody, because it's shown me how big the world is that we share.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's such a profound sense of community to be had on
Mhm.
Twitch, and it doesn't just have to be um surface level. You can
Yeah.
actually form, and especially I think that's one of the things that like I've learned, and that I think a lot of people have learned and begun to experience over the last year as well, with COVID isolating everyone as it has. So I've developed some very meaningful friendships with people who I've never met in real life.
You've
with
never met?
with
I
Yeah, with
know.
people who I only know, I don't even know their real name. I know their username, and that's
Yeah.
forever. Even if I meet them in real life, like you will be Mecca if I were to ever meet you in real life.
Right?
And it's such an interesting dynamic and
Mhm.
dichotomy to get into, but it's also really really cool and really really fascinating.
It's well, and you look at the social science behind people's usernames, and surprise, surprise, Mecca is not my real name, but what it gave me was the gift of reincarnation,
Yeah.
and I had so much tied to my legal name, like you've grown up with that name, that's who you are, and that is your identity, and until you take that identity and you own it, and you change your narrative. I feel like that allows you to change your narrative if you have an alternate name online, because it gives you the opportunity to become someone else that maybe you were unconsciously restricting yourself with.
So I talked to a buddy of mine who started streaming, and he had mentioned that he feels sometimes like it's easier to be himself on stream than it is in real life,
Okay.
which I thought was really really fascinating. And this is
Yeah.
totally me paraphrasing, because I don't remember exactly how they described it in the book, but there's a book called Scary Close, and everyone should read it. It talks all about
Ooh, okay.
relationships and being able to like drop the mask so you can really kind of get in touch with yourself, and
Be intimate with
be
yourself.
intimate with yourself and with others.
Yeah.
And they talk about when you're born, you think of like a dot on a piece of paper, and that's who you are. That's your soul or your being or whatever you want to
Mhm.
call it. And then the first time something embarrassing happens, the first time something happens where you are ashamed of it,
Shame trauma.
a ring forms around to protect
Okay.
your actual self. And then the next time something happens, another ring forms, and another ring forms, and another ring forms, until by the time you're an adult, you have all these rings closing off your actual self.
So,
And so
wow.
the concept, like what was fascinating to me about what he said was that when you start streaming, when you become Mecca and you start streaming, or when I become Mo and I started streaming, all of a sudden it's almost a new opportunity for you to go back to just being that dot on the piece of paper, because nothing embarrassing has happened to Mo.
Oh
Nothing
my
embarrassing has happened to
god.
Mecca, right?
That's so beautiful. Oh my god. I never like I needed like having you paint that picture for me. It's so absolutely like the reason I'm like I'm not really like on camera, if you could see me, I'm a little bit emotional, but I'm just like that is just you hit the nail on the head. Absolutely. And I think we can't feel like our most vulnerable authentic selves unless we feel safe. And sometimes it's putting on
Mhm.
changing something as simple as changing how you identify yourself by your name.
Right. Right. It's just a reinvention. It's a crazy concept to think about, and there's obviously like so much to dig into there, but
Yeah. It's it's
yes.
it's a it's a it's a Freudian conversation maybe for another episode, but I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. That's very, very
Good.
cool. Um
Good.
so before we move on to the next topic, I do want to talk about two things I think it's really important to talk about. in your professional opinion, and so you are still growing, but you're like a medium-sized just chatting streamer now, and you've found something that works and you're working on it. I want to hear, what is the key to being a successful just chatting streamer?
When I find out, I will let you know.
Yeah.
I I think this sounds like such a uber positive answer. I don't know how to phrase it, but I mean, I think the key to being a successful just chatting streamer is the same as it is being any other streamer or anything else in life. Like if you want to do it and you believe in it, then you'll find success. And I think patience is just one of the biggest things about it. I like being in the just chatting directory because I like talking to people. It's not a tactic to try and like bring in more people or meet anyone. There's not a strategy behind it. It's just I like talking to people and I like listening to people and I like meeting people and forming a community. I genuinely enjoy it. When I wake up in the morning and when I start streaming, I get excited at the prospect of community. I think if we're talking about if we do want to get more specific with it from a data standpoint, I mean, I think one of the keys is the same as it is with other streams, in that you have to be present other places as well, right? So if I'm gonna try and be a just chatting streamer, and that's how I'm gonna brand myself, I need to be that same personality on Twitter and on Instagram and on YouTube,
Instagram, TikTok,
and
YouTube.
There's not endless platforms, but sometimes it seems like it.
Well, and that's where we talked about walking the fine line between business and creativity and authenticity, because like you have to kind of have those two friends join together to become successful as a content creator. And I forgot my point. Nope, but that's okay. That happens. I was like, this is a really great way. It is. It's a really great way to start that sentence, and then I just forgot the rest of it. It's fine. I want to talk about I want to talk about how you feel you've grown as a content creator since that stream you told us about, your first just chatting stream, until now.
Yeah, I am thinking, and I'm sorry. Give me a moment. I think there have been several moments that jump to mind when I think about that question. Before I started chatting more consistently every single stream, after I'd still had that one stream where we chatted, it actually may have even been before that, but I was within my first year of streaming. I had switched to variety by this point, and I distinctly remember the worst month I had in streaming was over the course of 3 or 4 games.
What season of year was this?
Summer. Like late spring, early summer. I feel like it was like April.
Well, and the only reason I asked that is because Christmas time is notoriously bad for streamers. That's just the way it is, because everyone's busy.
Yeah. This was, I think this was April or May, and I had played, I can remember I played Neo into Neo 2, and I remember playing Final Fantasy VII Remake and Resident Evil 2 Remake.
Okay.
And the Final Fantasy VII Remake was the apex of a bad month. And essentially what happened was, and this kind of circles back to what you're talking about in the very beginning.
This came out last year. Was this last year?
Final Fantasy I think it was. Remake was last year.
Yeah, and Final Fantasy VII is like the big middle finger to everyone that grew up playing Final Fantasy. There's like a big pivotal moment that destroys it's the first loss of innocence for a lot of people.
The seven. So for me personally, 7 kind of like changed the rules of the game for me. It and no spoilers, because if you haven't experienced it, you really should.
Yeah. I've only read about it, so I know, but I'm not going to spoil it for anybody.
It definitely did something I had not seen a game do to that point, and it really took me back. Anyway, I say that because Final Fantasy VII was a very important game for me, and Final Fantasy VII Remake obviously was then very important for me as well.
You had to pick it up,
and it was
naturally.
a huge emotional experience for me.
Yeah.
I remember literally almost crying at the first scene and getting goosebumps right before you actually start playing a Final Fantasy VII Remake because there were just so many emotions coming up. Anyway, context. During that month, I remember, because I was forming friendships with more and more people. I was meeting more and more other content creators and, becoming closer with them. And I remember seeing all of them like meet these goals that they wanted, and they were getting more followers, and they were having great streams, and they were getting hype trains and all of this stuff. And I was genuinely excited for them. But there was also that part of me that it's like, what are they doing that I'm not doing?
Why not
why
me?
am I
Yeah.
why am I failing? Which is not the right word to use there, but it's how I felt. Why am I
It's how
failing
you felt.
where
Yeah.
they are succeeding? And I distinctly remember I had a week where there were two big moments in this month. I had a week or 2 weeks where I didn't do anything but lose followers. I think I went from like 116 to like 113. And it wasn't like...
No, those are the weeks you don't go on Sully Dome.
It was so bad. And it wasn't like I wasn't doing anything wrong. It wasn't people who were like, you suck and I'm out of here. It was, channels that probably did follow for follow or follow bots or something like that.
Yeah.
Something that was completely out of my control. But
when you're in that state of mind,
you can't logically
matters.
process
you
it.
You can't logically think about that. Right now, it's been over a year since that happened. But when you're in that state and you see your friends are successful, you see they're hitting their goals, and you're kind of in a gray area of what am I doing content-wise, and you're still trying to find that magic sweet spot, and then you see people are like leaving you, you're like, oh my God, my trauma.
Yeah, it was hard for me to deal with.
Not a good week.
And not a good week. And around that same time was when I was playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, and that is a very pivotal game for me in my streaming career up to this point, because it was such an important game to me, and because I was so emotionally invested in this story. And it's a great game, and they did an amazing job. I absolutely loved it. But I played it on release, which is, in my experience, a bad idea. Because people are either, they want to play the game themselves, they're trying to avoid spoilers, or they're going to watch like that top 1%, the huge names in the directory, play the game, because that's where they go to for that content, which is not anyone's fault. Like that's where they go. Yeah. So playing a game on release, like historically, if you look at my numbers, anytime I play on release week, it is always, like 50% drop. It's huge.
I didn't consider that because I remember the week Beyond Light came out, and that's one of my lowest weeks.
Absolutely. Same. Yep. Yeah. And it is for most streamers. But I remember sitting in my office. I beat the game. It was this huge end fight, and we were rolling credits, and I was so excited and then immediately sad because there was no one in chat, and I felt alone.
Oh, my heart hurt.
I felt so alone, and it was this moment where all of a sudden I felt outside of myself. And it's fine, but like it was one of those moments where I was outside of myself, where all of a sudden something that should have been this really wonderful moment for me of reconnecting with this game and reconnecting with my childhood through this game and having this beautiful moment. Yeah, I was just focused on, I'm not doing a good job of creating content. Instead of just enjoying the experience, all I could focus on was feeling like I wasn't doing a good job. And that, for me, I think was it was a difficult moment and a difficult pill to swallow, that I was focused entirely too much on the ego side of things instead of just enjoying the experience. And so much so that I had let it tarnish what should have just been a wonderful experience for me.
Your ego as a content creator is the biggest asshole in your life. It's like a colleague that will not leave you alone.
Yeah, and that's a difficult battle, right? Of trying to, be less egotistical and more confident. And it's there's a lot, but that, I know this was a bit of a tangent, but to circle back, it's relevant, I promise. It was an important lesson for me that uh, I need to. It's okay to have moments to myself. It's okay to separate things out. I don't have to share everything and create that content for the community. There are things that I can just myself experience. And it also really set in that I need to not crutch on something to create content. If I'm going to create content, I need to create content.
That's such a valid point, because, and like, I've hit that hurdle, and I think a lot of people that are like, it takes, I talk about content creating as it's one of the steepest career hills to climb, but once you're there, once you're at the top, it is incredibly fiscally rewarding. And I talk about that because I haven't had a job in 2 years, so that's why.
I get it.
Right?
I get
it. And you know, so that is on the forefront of my mind. But it's a steep hill to climb, but once you're there, it's really rewarding. But you have to go through that 1 to 3 first years of finding your niche and finding what you want to do, especially if you're someone in their late 20s, early 30s, that you've lived life a little bit, you know what you don't like, you know what you do like, but you're still finding out what you can contribute to the world that we share. And that's what we said earlier, is why it's such a wonderful time to be alive, because the internet is very, very young in compared to the rest of technology the world has had. And we have the opportunity to connect with somebody in Norway, in Australia, in New Zealand, in Africa in 2 seconds. And now we've made a friend. And that sense of community is something that we've never had ever in the world.
Yeah, totally agree. And it's scary. It's absolutely terrifying, but it's also exceptionally rewarding.
Absolutely. You know, those relationships change you, you know, like I said happy birthday to a friend of mine today that it was his birthday yesterday, and I was like, we did an episode of my podcast last year, and his story was so impactful that will forever be in my life. That will shape who I am as a person, that will define decisions I make moving forward, because that vulnerable moment was so important that I heard this person's life story. And that's what I love and find most rewarding about this, is that connection. Is
this Mikey?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You listened to that one. Yeah.
I did listen to that one.
Yeah. And it was his birthday yesterday, and I just sent him a message. Like, we haven't really been as tight as we were at one point, but just having that moment together will forever, ever be in my life, you know?
100%. Yep.
Okay, so I think a really important thing to talk about is, and any genre in the directory, whether it's just chatting, whether it's Halo, whether you're playing an old Sonic game, which I like to do sometimes, we have unpredictable things happen in stream. And that's one of the things that kind of throw me off as a streamer, is where there's things that I'm a control freak, and I know there's a lot of the Achilles heel. Shit, I was gonna say Achilles tendon. The Achilles heel of you got it, of being a content creator, is that we love to be creative, we love to embrace people in community, we love to connect with others, but some of us, and if not all of us, are very, very highly controlling, and being a live streamer is like a double-edged sword. So Mo, I want to hear about how you handle unpredictable things that happen in chat. It could be dead air, as you shared with us recently in a very vulnerable moment, or it could be someone trolling you in chat and you're like, I have no mods, what do I do? You know, so it's all our learning curves and our hurdles we go through. So I'd love to hear your story.
Talking about like dealing with trolls, for instance, in chat.
I think that's a very relatable story.
What I want to say right now, and I'm not sure that I can qualify it, is I feel like, for me personally at least, being a content creator and being a live streamer puts me in a position where all of a sudden I am like really close to and facing issues that I should be going to therapy for, like setting boundaries. Because
you were talking about stuff like procrastination, and while that's a really easy conversation and topic to have, you are in front of a camera, but you don't understand the person that's typing back to you behind that username, and sometimes these people need more serious help than just having a shoulder to talk to.
Right, and that in and of itself is a very like, I will always constantly, I try to remind when we're having these conversations, especially like I nor anyone else here are a mental health professional. No one here has a degree. We're not providing a service. We're not doing anything. We're just having an open conversation. And we also have resources like in our Discord server for if you need to find therapy, if you're suffering from mental illness and you need to talk to someone, you need to talk to a professional about it.
Numbers,
here's your resources. Yeah, here you go.
And to put it out there, I have called the distress center probably 5 times in my entire life, and I will never regret that I did.
Yeah, because it's not a bad thing. We all have stuff that we're dealing with, and we need to talk to people about it who have trained in their life to deal with that stuff. And it's not there's nothing negative about that. But in terms of just dealing like with like if we're talking about just dealing with a troll in chat, for instance, that's something that I have always really struggled with setting boundaries because I have, it's self-esteem issues, right? Like I struggle with the concept of not everyone liking me. That's difficult for me to wrap my brain around.
That's such a human feeling to have. It's so normal,
Sure.
I'm privileged, I think, because I'm able to unhealthily compartmentalize things. But if I'm in the wrong headspace, you will not see me online for 3 days. I will be like, someone said something mean to me in the playground of my chat room and I had to go away. And it's like, but that happens so infrequently now. But especially when you're getting started, you're just like, I'm going to drown myself in a pillow and not come up for air because someone said I was ugly.
Yep. And, and it's difficult to set the boundary and just accept right away, like, I don't really care what you think because I don't know who you are and you don't contribute. You're not contributing to my life or this community or this stream in any way.
So in this context, this is someone that just joined your chat and is clearly trying to be an asshole.
Yeah, and I think to be clear, I think that that's a very surface example that most people can get behind of like, oh, if they're just being a troll, you ban them, and it's not like I had this conversation with Mrs. Mo recently as well. Like, I'm not someone who can just not take things personally. I do take things personally. So instead, I just try to give myself the compassion and accept, like, I know I'm going to take this personally, and that's fine. I'll process it. I think it gets more nuanced than that when you have to start setting boundaries with maybe longer term community members.
Can you, if you're comfortable, I'd love to hear an example, because I think that's the struggle we have as we grow and our numbers get bigger. Like, there are horror stories you hear about on the Twitterverse, and you see streamer Twitter will blow up maybe once a month about drama in someone's community. But I think at the end of the day, like, one of the most emotionally challenging things to do is draw professional boundaries with relationships that don't fit into the friend mold anymore.
Yeah, and there's huge, now people are talking about parasocial relationships and doing research onto it, and that's a whole other can of worms. For me personally, that example that comes to mind is in stream, we got on the subject of vegetarianism and veganism, which is a hot topic for certain people because people have very passionate beliefs on both sides of the argument.
It can be quite triggering for people.
It can be quite
very aggressive to talk about that. But everyone is entitled. That's the privilege of being in a first world, is we're allowed to eat. We are allowed and given the gift to eat what we want.
Yeah, and it's really the reality of what happened was the conversation, not between me and the person, but between people in the community, got to a point where people were no longer listening, and people were just talking at each other, and just it continued to escalate and escalate and escalate. And eventually I had to step in with another mod and just shut the conversation down completely, which is something that I try not to do because I don't want people to feel like they can't talk in stream. But when it crosses the line where you're no longer being respectful, then
it takes the energy out of the room, and then you're left with this empty. If you think of our chat like a party, and like if if someone walks into a big party and they say, oh, this is just a very blanket example, but they say my mom just died, and then it's like, oh
yeah,
okay.
And you visualize your chat, and now you have a bunch of people standing around a room holding their drinks, not talking to each other, and the music has just died, and everyone's like,
exactly.
Okay,
and it's your job to bring that music back up and that energy back up, and how do you
that's
keep
difficult,
people that
and that's
were
difficult.
disagreeing Absolutely.
And I ended up talking to both of them, and they're still part of the community. They're still great people. And I
Congratulations, you
respected
recovered.
both of their viewpoints on it and everything. Thank you. But that very much painted a picture to me where I was letting the community control the stream as opposed to this is my stream and my platform. And so, the solution we ended up coming up with was like, look, we're not going to talk about this anymore here. You guys can DM each other in Discord. And we've set up since then, I've set up channels in Discord where it's like, here's our informative chat. If you want to post an article about something and then have a conversation with someone, here's your channel to do it. Please feel free, go right on ahead.
And you saw the outlet your community was calling for, which you didn't even know until you enacted that conversation, and you gave them the tools to properly communicate with each other. And the fact that you still have them in your community and they still can respectfully speak to each other and respect you as a creator, that is huge. And it sounded like, even though some feelings might have been hurt in that altercation, the most important thing is you grew as a creator. You had to draw a boundary, which you had to have drawn eventually. You learned about these two individuals and it furthered your relationship with them, and you expanded your Discord in a fruitful way to show more of what you value. And I think even though it was uncomfortable, it was a win.
Yeah, and there's a couple thoughts just come to mind. Like, I think it's important for people to talk about the things that they believe in. And, and if you want to have that conversation, by all means, please have that conversation. And if I can help enable you to have that conversation and create a platform for you to do it, then let's do it. My stream, while we're all just vibing and playing a game, is maybe not the spot to do it. But I am happy to help you provide a spot where you can talk about that, because if you believe in it and you want to talk about it, you should have the power to talk about it, and B, I want to listen to you because I can probably learn something from that. And
you're
the other
open-minded.
thing, yeah, and we should be open-minded. And the other thing that comes to mind with that is, and we'll talk about this a lot, it's difficult. It's a difficult concept, but I think we all know it to a degree. If you set a boundary and someone reacts poorly to that, then that means that person's probably a taker and not someone you should probably communicate with very often and have a relationship with to begin with.
I love that saying. I mean, there's a meme that goes around every few weeks on Twitter where it's talking about boundaries. And I think it's something that we learn as we get older is, if you're someone like myself that battled self-esteem issues, that I was a doormat for a lot of my life because it was easier to be passive than to demand what I deserved. And I found my strength through content creation, and where there's behavior I just don't tolerate, I'm like blocked. But it also came from having a really strong community behind me.
Yeah,
I've had the same mods ever since I started streaming, and while there has been rifts, there's been challenges. Those people I know my brand, they know what I value, they know what I'm doing this for, and they will not if I have no mods in chat and I type in my mod chat saying, guys, I need help right now, one of them will stop what they're doing and be there and ban somebody, or be there for 5 minutes to make sure it's fine. Like, it's, you know what I mean? And I didn't feel like I deserved that when I first got started. And you know what I mean? Like, you're just like, why do you care about me?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I also struggled with being a doormat and some severe self-esteem and confidence issues, but that's something to unpack for another time. But yeah, I mean, I totally get it. And if you set a boundary, someone who respects you and respects what you're doing will have no problem with that boundary. They'll be like, cool, I get it. And if someone does not take that well, then they're probably not meant to be a part of your community. And they can, and that's not, that doesn't even mean that they're a bad person. That just means that this relationship is not working out, and they should probably go somewhere else.
Third topic I thought was interesting is that production for a Twitch stream looks flawless. Like, you turn on the camera, everything looks so wonderful and professional, especially your setup mode. Like, all your setup looks so good. What's interesting is the viewers don't see the back end work to see it look flawless. And, maybe it's my experience from working in the television and film industry that I know that how much work goes into something. And like, for example, this series that I'm doing, This has been 2 months in pre-production, 1 month in production. It's gonna take another 6 weeks to get everything executed and out for this first, I'm not gonna call it a season, but it's like the first
Sure.
round of interviews,
Sure.
completely from start to finish, executed on YouTube, on Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it takes a lot of time. And I want to hear what your prep looks like for an average just chatting stream. So you mentioned that you posted a topic on Twitter, you did research, you did stuff like that. So how many hours does it take? So your streams are about 3 hours. How many hours of prep do you put into making that 3 hours amazing?
When it comes to when it comes to my Tuesday streams we're talking about a specific subject, and it's like I'm going to present this topic, I'm going to share my experiences, and then we're going to talk about it as a community. That is the culmination of about a week's worth of work, and it's not a week of constant work. It's not like it's so time consuming that I'm doing anything else. It's more, the week before on Wednesday or Thursday, I'll start talking to the community about it, and I'll start kind of getting some ideas and start feeling things out. I'll send out a tweet. I'll start to have conversations. And then usually on, like the way I did it this last time was on Monday after stream, I dug in and started going online and getting my resources together and listening to some podcasts and some videos on YouTube about it, and just putting everything together for that stream. Outside of those streams, when it comes to just a typical just chatting stream, I don't want to say it's off the cuff because I don't want to paint the wrong picture, but I don't do prep work prior to firing up stream in terms of that individual stream.
Like if it's just like hanging out with a friend at a coffee shop style stream, then yeah, like that doesn't a lot of prep besides doing a tech test maybe before you start streaming.
Right, which is the vibe. Vibe. It's just very, hey, we're all just hanging out. Let's chat. How's your day? My day, it's good, and someone eventually says something that can spur into a larger conversation. I feel like there's two different kinds of prep work. There's prep work that you do for a specific topic before a stream, and then, I think the prep work for just chatting this sounds like super like esoteric, and I don't know how else to articulate it, but the prep work just kind of comes from life experiences.
Yeah,
a lot of the reason...
That's why a lot of people struggle when they're really in their early 20s, late teens, trying to be a Twitch streamer in that genre, because you have no experience to pull from. You can't be strong. And, there's exceptions to the rule. I know talking about this, talking in generalizations generally gets you in trouble in anything content related. But I think that having life experience is an asset that people might not understand how important it is being a content creator.
Yeah, and that's not to say that you even have to have, like I look back at nothing, it's not like I've never like been skydiving or anything like that. I've never had super extreme life experiences, but I have had very meaningful life experiences, and I have had very impactful experiences in my past. And for me personally, what has helped me is being comfortable with just being transparent about it. Being comfortable with being able to, on this, like when we talked about procrastination, really what we were talking about was less procrastination and more so fear stopping you from doing something that you want because you're so afraid of the outcome that you end up
it's the self-sabotage.
Yeah, you end up just sitting still instead of trying it and either failing or succeeding. And either one of those options is better than just not doing it. And so for me personally, one of the things that's helped me a lot and helped me, I think, connect with people more and help me form the community is being just transparent about some of the experiences on stream is coming on and saying like, I am ashamed. I have done things in life that I'm ashamed of, and whether it was procrastinating work or just not turning in projects or just kind of looking back and not really being proud of the person I was at the time or anything like that.
Oh my God, absolutely, right? And that's the most important part of being I'm saying dumb more to myself than anyone that's a young adult right now, but you are dumb when you're a young adult. You don't know who you are yet. You don't have your value system super locked in yet. And like what you just said completely aligns with, I relate so much to that because that's been a big part of some of my streams is talking about, there were some decisions I made that I absolutely absolutely would disagree with. Now I am a completely different person than who I was when I was 23.
Yeah. I think there is so much in life that is a universal experience that
Mhm.
someone has also gone through in one way or another, that I think sometimes when people look back on their life and they think, I haven't done anything exceptional, I haven't done anything noteworthy, what would I possibly talk about? There are thousands of other people who have lived similar lives, and it's not that there's nothing noteworthy that's happened in your life. It's not that there's nothing exceptional that's happened. It's just that's your perspective on it. That's how you
Yep.
view it when you put yourself next to someone else and you compare
Mhm.
yourself to, someone who's done something that is in your mind great. When the reality is that a lot of people have had very similar and shared experiences. A lot of people have had a bad day at work because
Mhm.
they didn't turn in something on time, or someone was a jerk, or something
Yeah.
happened. And it's those conversations that are relatable, that people are like,
Yeah.
me too, it really sucked, this was my experience with it. And that's where you can get these incredible conversations, and that's where you can start to really get this amazing sense of community, because you come together over being human.
It's the most, and it's so cheese. I mean, like, humans are the most arrogant mammals in the world, don't get me wrong, but
Sure.
we're sentient, it's fine. Um, but, understanding that humans are we're not all that different, and
Yeah.
as much as we like to say that we are, and understanding that truth has made me it's been quite humbling to know I'm a child of divorce. So are me and many other people. I graduated college. I didn't go to university. So are me and many other people. Moments that I shame, like, I think it's vulnerability factors and shame stats, shame nerves. That's what I call them. Those are so not unique to me. My story, it's like one time, and so I thought I saw a therapist for a long time when I was younger, and she's like, and when I say younger, I mean like 6 years ago. She said to me that
Younger.
she's like, you think that your life is exclusive to you, and you're arrogant and you think the world revolves around you at that age. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, no, but there's so many other people that have gone through what you go through, and you have this shield around you, like you're the
Yeah.
only one that's gone through this, keeping you from having connections and authentic connections with people because you are afraid that they will shame you.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And to just kind of circle back to the initial question, again, I apologize, I go on these tangents, but
But this is also maybe a good thing why we don't hang out a lot, because we will just go
just
on
talk
a
and talk and
tangent and
talk.
suddenly it's 7 hours
It's been
later.
hours.
Yeah.
I for me personally, one of the things that's helped me be comfortable chatting more and more with people is just trying to continue to do work on myself, whether that's reading self-help books,
Yep.
or just trying to and go for a run and physically improve myself, find a way to meditate, doing things like that. That has helped me a lot.
Meditation.
Yeah.
That's why I do that when I can't sleep. I'll just like be mindfully aware of my body and then be like, what's the most comfortable part of my body right now? And then I won't realize that my back isn't really comfortable. So then I'll be mindful and meditate on that comfort, and then I'll fall asleep.
Yep. Yep.
Yep.
I think scientifically it's the same concept as counting sheep, because it puts your brain into
Yep.
task mode and it makes you tired. That's one of the things that has helped me a lot. And I know that that's not necessarily going to help other people, but I have found that to be infinitely more helpful than trying to come up with
Funny
channel
TikToks.
point gimmicks, or anything like that.
Yeah, I want you to know that that is one of the reasons why I wanted to connect with you, because I don't know when you started doing that. I know when it started to show in your content though. And I know that's when I really saw you were finding your groove, you were finding your way. I 2020 blended into one moment in time. So I don't know the exact point, but I know it was last year. You started posting really high quality photos. And that was when I was like, you should make an Instagram for your hair. But your messages in the comments, your details after the photo were so mindful and so emotional and raw and vulnerable. And then I started to see that exposed in your Twitter content and then in the clips that you would post from Twitch. And I don't know what it was, but that was when I saw a real growth in your confidence in yourself and your content. And I think that's the authenticity that your audience is gravitated to.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. That's very, very nice of you to say. And I think I've just...
Mo's Instagram needs Mo's hair needs its own Instagram. That's one of my favorite things I've ever said to you.
That brings me so much joy because I used to hate my hair.
Good.
But I have been very lucky to have connected with so many people who are empowering and encouraging, and like in particular Mrs. Mo, not to be overly sappy, but is always supportive and always encouraging and always there to be a sounding board and to just talk about this stuff. And so I always consider myself very lucky because I realize not everyone has the luxury of, having friends or having a partner in life that they can truly connect with and be vulnerable with, and get the support that they need in those situations. So it's been a real, right? I am exceptionally grateful. It's been a real blessing.
I feel the same way about Hero, my partner. We're like, him and I are both on the content journey a little bit together, and when you can light a spark in someone else, that's when, like, you light a spark, but you keep realistic. You keep things realistic, and you're like, okay, well, you want to do this. What are you going to do about lighting? And then it's like, oh shit, I didn't think about that. So you ask inquisitive questions. You're not a yes man, as we said before.
Yep.
But you are a supportive partner in seeing the spark in someone, and you encourage them to follow that. And I think that's really wonderful that you found that in Mrs. Mo.
Very, very grateful.
So Mo, we're going to move on to our last question. And I think that this is really important. And I think this one can be narrowed down pretty quickly, because it is
challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted. But I think, and it wasn't you, it's just because it is such a hot topic for people that literally the answer changes every week for some people. And I was watching a Harris Heller video a few weeks ago, and he just was like, I'm switching to YouTube, but it might not be for you, so don't follow me.
Right.
Are you considering staying on Twitch or going to another platform? And I want to hear why.
I am definitely going to be on Twitch for the foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm.
But I 100% believe that I need to have a presence elsewhere as well.
Mm-hmm.
If for nothing else than not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Yep.
If I am entirely on Twitch and that is my main outlet for content and income financially, and then something happens.
Yep.
And I don't want to find myself in a pickle. I would much rather be able to be like, that sucks, but I have this, and this, and it's okay.
I think that's a really smart thing to do, and I've seen that happen to people in not my immediate community, but I've seen that happen to people where they were soaring at one moment on one platform, and then something changed either in their life or they didn't have the time, or yada yada yada, and then they lost all of their presence, and it was just like almost like overnight it happened. And it just like that. Well, what's frustrating me about this is that, like, I haven't been on Twitch in a month, and my numbers weren't really going up or down. I was just like, but I wanted to start putting my eggs in another basket, and that's like, I'm nowhere right now. I don't have a presence except on Twitter, but come July, I might have a different story to tell, right? You just don't know, but you have to try.
Yeah. And I think, so to answer your question, I know that was a nebulous answer, and I apologize.
You and I are just going off on dissertations today.
Yes, we are. I have no plans in the immediate future to not stream on Twitch anymore. Mm-hmm. But I think it's foolish to not diversify, and I would use Mixer and Snapchat as examples of why it's so important to be global with your content. None of those creators saw Mixer shutting down, and then they all got an email saying, hey, by the way, we're shutting down
in 30 days.
Good luck, have fun. And with Snapchat,
that was huge for a long time there.
It was, and then
the filters now.
It was, and then Instagram was like, cool, we'll add stories. And then
Yeah.
what's the point of having an app that only does one thing when you can have an app that does multiple things? And Harris, you know, you brought up Harris Heller. Harris Heller brought that point up, that Twitch is in a similar situation where it's, I mean, I think when you think streaming, you think Twitch. I think it's the biggest name in the game right now, but I think I think it is ill-advised and short-sighted to think that there's not going to be big innovations in the next few years, and that the framework of, you know, content creation and where content is, where people go to for it, could change overnight.
I would love to see the analytics on Google's end to see the trends that are starting, because you see, like, they're like babies, right? You see them and it's like, oh, this might not grow to something, but this might grow somewhere else. And I'm just so curious to see the trend. No, we can't though, because COVID just happened, so that just fucked up any analytics. So never mind.
Yeah, because everyone's been coming to streaming. Yeah.
So they had like an influx where they wouldn't. So maybe, you know what? We don't know what's going to happen in 2 years, but that might have saved whatever bad things could have happened pre-COVID.
Yeah, 100%. But I mean, I think, I keep going back to that point. Purely from a business standpoint, I think diversification is very, very important.
It's more of a time commitment, but you're just sitting there. If you're streaming for 6 hours a day, and for probably a quarter of that time you're not talking or engaging with chat, or you're not doing anything, you could spend that time, cut your stream down to 4 hours, and spend that time making Instagrams, posting photos. There is content diversification that doesn't demand all of you, and you can keep your presence on other things. That's, I think some people like myself, when I was trying to get started, I put all of my attention into one thing, and I was like, I have to be the best at this thing. And then I'm just like, actually, I don't. I can stream for 3 hours, 3 times a week, and then take those clips and put them on Instagram, put them on TikTok, and do these other things. But I'm repurposing content because it's what I have time for, you know?
Yeah. And for the record, I mean, that's totally a reasonable thing to do. When you start out, I'm going to focus on one thing at a time. But I think at some point you have to, at some point you're going to get comfortable enough that you will then have the capacity to, okay, I'm going to start doing 2 things. So I'm going to start streaming. Yeah. Once you are more comfortable on Twitch, okay, now I'm going to get on Twitter. Once you're more comfortable on Twitter, okay, now maybe I'll think about creating content for YouTube. You know, maybe, yeah, it's, I think, to circle all the way back to what we were talking about in the beginning, I think if you're going to be a content creator, to be a content creator means to have a global presence.
I love it. I think that's an excellent place to shut her down for the day, Mo. Mo, where can my wonderful viewers and listeners find you in the internet?
If you search Mo Rains, I will likely come up. It's twitch.tv/Mo_Rains.
Underscore was important.
Underscore, I was trying to find you yesterday. Underscore is hella important. So just search Mo_Rains, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, and YouTube.
And are you on TikTok at all, or not yet?
I am on TikTok, but there's no. I have like four. There's like 4 videos, and they're
it's getting there. It's getting there. Yeah, that's all that's important. And Mo, before we close it off officially for this episode, what is one thing that you love about content creation?
I feel this is always a weird way to describe it. I feel more connected, and like I feel like I'm on the right path when I am doing content creation, as opposed to everything else in my life, and where I felt like I was just kind of treading water, and like I always felt a bit on the outside. I feel extremely down to my core connected with content creation, and that's my favorite thing about it. Is I wake up every single day and I feel like I'm doing what I should be doing.
Mo, thank you so much for your time, energy, and meaningful, important, impactful contributions today to this episode. I'm sure our viewers have learned something new, and that's the most important part about this series, is sharing the advice, the wealth of information that we have learned, trudging our way through being a content creator and finding our niche. Mo, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
No problem, my dude. We will chat again soon. And everybody, if you wanted to see Mo's content, please click in the description below. I have his links available. He's an amazing streamer. As I said before, he's a creator I greatly admire. Mo, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for your time, your contribution, and for sharing your knowledge with our listeners today.
It is absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much.